Not So Obvious Watches. I'm Pete McConville. Today a quick video kind of inspired by one I did a couple of days ago, which was my review of the Seiko Neo Sport. To be honest, I didn't love that review. I didn't like doing it very much, and then when I looked back I realized I kind of skipped through it quite quickly. I didn't bring to it the level of production that I really felt like that I was really happy with, which made me think it wasn't the end of the world, so I put it out, and a lot of you kind of seem to have liked it, so thank you. But it made me stop and think, why didn't I like it? Why was I doing the review if I wasn't enjoying it? And I figured the answers were kind of worth putting on this on video. The first thing to really think about is, why do I review watches at all? I'm not really a big watch reviewer. I do a watch review once every couple of weeks on this channel. Paradoxically, reviewing watches is actually one of the things that made me kind of think about doing a YouTube channel in the first place, even though it's not something I really enjoy doing. I blame Worn and Wound. I blame the Worn and Wound podcast, because they put a germ in my head one day as I was listening to them as I was driving that I never really quite got rid of. And there was a guy there talking about his journey through watches, blah, blah, blah. He began life as a reviewer for musical stuff, but he got into watches and he spoke about his journey through learning about watches. And he said, look, if you ever really want to know how much, or more importantly, how little you know about something, pick watches, then try writing about it. Because until you try writing about it, you never really know how little you know about something. And so I actually took that advice and I tried just jotting down some notes about a watch, and I very quickly realized I actually knew very little about watches. It's kind of when you're listening to a review and someone starts talking about applied indices versus printed, syringe hands versus needle versus cathedral versus snowflake versus whatever, you kind of, there are bits in there that you kind of you let them wash over you and you don't really think about too much. When you're going to try and write something down, you don't get that option of just letting stuff sort of flow through to the keeper. You kind of have to stop and think hard about, hang on, how am I going to describe these hands? How am I going to describe these indices? You start getting into, and I'm still definitely going through this, and the Seiko review started bringing this out for, how do you start describing the difference in the quality of polishing, the difference in the quality of brushing? Trying to review a watch and write about the watch makes you think so much harder about it. Very quickly on that Seiko, so why did I struggle? I think it's because it is a lot of work, and if you don't enjoy the watch, for me, if I don't enjoy the watch, it is kind of, I have to drag myself through a hedge to do it. I'm still glad I did it because I like to understand my watches, and in that particular case it made me understand and think really hard about my motivation for buying a watch, and where I find myself after I just surrender to an impulse and buy it, that I end up owning this watch that I don't really love. But even then, there's still a fair bit to look at. And that's one of the reasons I think why my watch reviews tend to be so long. Look, I'm a YouTuber. I've done the things that YouTubers do. You look at your analytics and you look at how long people watch, and most of you will jump out of this video after 4 or 5 minutes. It's just the way things are. And I've tried to shorten my reviews to fit more in, but frankly, I don't do the watch reviews for you. I'm doing the watch reviews for me. I'm doing the watch review for me so that I understand my watch. And to understand this watch, it takes me about half an hour. In fact, if you looked at the raw footage, that Neo Sport, it's actually about 35 minutes of me just sitting in my room with the door shut, my wife wondering what the hell I'm doing, talking to a camera. And I cut it down to 20 minutes. So there's a lot in these little watches if we want to. And quite frankly, I kind of get frustrated at people who think that they can tell you everything you need to know about a watch in 3 or 4 minutes. Any watch that can be described that quickly, I'm not interested in. Where it gets even more interesting is when you've looked at the watch, you've tried to understand the watch, you've then tried to write about the watch, which has made you do even more. But then you take the step of putting what you've written, what you've said up on lights, up on YouTube in front of everyone. And you've got to start thinking, geez, I better get this right because I don't want to be an idiot. And then you start discovering some really interesting things. So it's like, this is probably worth a whole video in itself, but I'll quickly touch on it now. When I was doing the Fortis Flieger review, they made a claim. There's a claim in a lot of the Fortis things that one of their watches from the mid-40s was the first truly waterproof watch. That didn't sound right. I didn't feel comfortable saying that online. I knew that there were Omegas and I knew that there were Rolexes earlier than that. So I started doing some research just so I knew where I stood. And that unveiled this whole new story about the murky world and the murky claims of the waterproof watch. For example, something you learn every day, most of the technologies that went into those first Oyster cases that Rolex put together, Rolex didn't develop. They just bought the patents from another company who did all the hard work. That came as a surprise. It's probably worth a video one day about what does it mean to develop something when you're just a patent buyer. But that's a different question altogether. But there's an example of how it becomes really interesting, this idea of saying, I just want to know more about my watch. I'm going to try and think about my watch. I'm going to try and write about my watch. Now I'm going to try and talk to other people about my watch. Drives you down this point of looking at all this different stuff and doing all this research that I would never have otherwise done. All because, in this particular case, I ended up learning about Rolex's purchase of patents to make their first Oyster case and screw down crowns because I was doing a review on a GMT Flieger watch. Go figure. So that's really it. That's why I do my reviews. That is why the reviews keep getting so longer. That's why the reviews sort of focus on the things that they do, because they're the things I'm interested in. And here's the point. One of the things I can't recommend strongly enough is that you try and review your own watches too. You don't have to follow my method. You don't have to. Maybe the things that are important to you are completely different. But what I'd suggest, and the reason I'm saying this is because we constantly get told that there's way more to this hobby than simply buying watches, that you should try and appreciate the watches that you do in fact already own. And that's an easy thing to say, that's an easy platitude, but how do you do that? My suggestion is, even if you never put it in a podcast, even if you never review it, even if it's just only ever on the back of a piece of paper that you just throw away at the end of it, try and write a review on your own watches. Try and think about how you would describe them. And what I would guarantee is that you will find things about your watch that you don't know yet. You find things about your watch that you never even understood were there. You'll find things that make you go other places to learn more about your watch and watches in general. And that's a good thing. And you know what? It costs you nothing except a bit of time, and it drags you away from eBay and Chrono24 and puts you in a place where you're actually learning about something other than how to spend money. And there are so many opportunities in this hobby to get wrapped up in the spending of the money bit that I think grabbing those opportunities to do something that doesn't involve cash is gold. So that's it, a very quick video really trying to give you an idea of something you can do with this hobby that doesn't involve spending money, planning to spend money, wishing you could spend money. Review your watches, learn about them, write it down, and you know what, even go further. Stick it on a YouTube channel, stick it on a blog, put yourself through that. It's actually really quite fun, except if you find halfway through you don't like the watch very much, as I did. Please subscribe if you like this, you'll get more content like this, and please subscribe if you would like to see me get in front of the guys from Scottish Watches and Clockbait. We're locked in a death match down at the bottom end. It's a race to see who can be the biggest tiny little challenge. Sorry, who can be the biggest tiny little channel. On YouTube at the moment. I'm trailing badly, so I need all the help I can get to catch the guys from Clockbait and Scottish Watches. So please subscribe, and I'll see you later. Bye.